When we think of Abraham Lincoln, we picture the stoic face on the $5 bill, the great emancipator who freed the slaves and saved the Union. He's often seen as America's greatest president, a moral giant. But like any historical figure, the real story is far more complex, filled with difficult choices, contradictions, and what some might call dark secrets. Today, we're peeling back the layers of the legend to look at the controversial and often overlooked aspects of Lincoln's presidency. This isn't about tearing down a hero, but about understanding the immense pressures and gray areas he operated in. So, what don't they teach you about Honest Abe in history class? Let's find out. First, let's talk about the Constitution. Lincoln is famous for preserving the Union, but the methods he used were extreme, and many at the time called him a tyrant. One of his most controversial actions was the suspension of habeas corpus. This is a fundamental right that says the government can't just lock you up indefinitely without charging you with a crime. But Lincoln suspended it, not just in the rebellious South, but throughout the Union. This allowed the military to arrest and imprison thousands of civilians without trial. We're talking about newspaper editors, politicians, and ordinary citizens who were suspected of being Confederate sympathizers or simply for speaking out against the war. One of the most famous cases is that of Clement Vallandigham, a congressman from Ohio, who was arrested by the military for making an anti-war speech. He was exiled to the Confederacy. Think about that for a second. A sitting congressman, banished for his words. For Lincoln, these measures were a military necessity to win the war and save the nation. But, for his critics, he was trampling on the very liberties he claimed to be fighting for. Next up, let's tackle the Emancipation Proclamation. It's one of the most celebrated documents in American history, but its reality is a lot more complicated than a simple act of moral righteousness. Many people believe Lincoln freed all the slaves with the stroke of a pen. That's not quite true. The proclamation, issued in 1863, only applied to slaves in the states that were in active rebellion against the Union. It specifically did not free the slaves in the border states that had remained loyal, like Kentucky, Maryland, and Delaware. Why? Because Lincoln was terrified of pushing these crucial slave-holding states into joining the Confederacy. If they left, the Union cause might have been lost. So, the Emancipation Proclamation was as much a strategic military move as it was a moral one. It was designed to disrupt the Confederacy's economy, which was built on slave labor, and to prevent European powers like Britain and France from officially recognizing the South. It was a brilliant political and military stroke, but it wasn't the universal Declaration of Freedom we often imagine. The complete abolition of slavery across the entire United States wouldn't come until the 13th Amendment was passed after the war. And this brings us to Lincoln's personal views on race, which are a major point of debate among historians. Before the war, Lincoln was not an abolitionist. He was part of the Free Soil movement, which aimed to stop the spread of slavery into new Western territories, not to end it where it already existed. In his famous 1858 debates with Stephen Douglas, Lincoln made statements that are shocking to our modern ears. He said he was not, and never had been, in favor of bringing about the social and political equality of the white and black races. He said he opposed black people having the right to vote, to serve on juries, or to intermarry with whites. He believed there was a physical difference between the two races that would forever prevent them from living together on terms of absolute equality. So what happened? Did he have a change of heart? The answer is complex. The Civil War forced Lincoln to confront the issue of slavery head-on. As the war dragged on, and he witnessed the bravery of black soldiers fighting for the Union, his views began to evolve. By the end of his life, in his last public address, Lincoln mentioned giving the right to vote to some African Americans, specifically the very intelligent and, those who serve our cause as soldiers. This was a huge step from where he started, but it still fell short of full equality. Lincoln's journey on race was a slow, profound evolution, shaped by the brutal reality of war. Another dark chapter involves the treatment of Native Americans during his presidency. While Lincoln's attention was consumed by the Civil War, horrific events were unfolding on the western frontier. The most infamous was the Dakota War of 1862 in Minnesota. After years of broken treaties and starvation, the Dakota people rose up. In the aftermath, a military tribunal sentenced 303 Dakota men to death. This would have been the largest mass execution in U.S. history. To his credit, Lincoln personally reviewed every single case. He commuted the sentences of most of the men, but he still approved the execution of 38, determining they had been involved in massacres of civilians. While his intervention saved hundreds of lives, the largest mass execution in American history still happened on his watch. Furthermore, during his administration, the forced relocation of the Navajo and Mescalero Apache peoples, known as the Long Walk, took place. Thousands were forced to march hundreds of miles to a desolate reservation, and many died along the way. These events are a stark reminder that while one great struggle for freedom was happening, other injustices were being perpetrated. Finally, there's the sheer brutality of the war itself. Lincoln appointed generals like Ulysses S. Grant and William Tecumseh Sherman, who understood that to win, they had to wage total war. This wasn't just about armies fighting armies on a battlefield. It was about crushing the enemy's will to fight by destroying their economy and infrastructure. Sherman's march to the sea is the most famous example. His army cut a 60-mile-wide path of destruction through Georgia, burning plantations, destroying railroads, and seizing food and supplies. This strategy was effective in breaking the back of the Confederacy and shortening the war, but it inflicted immense suffering on the civilian population. For Southerners, this was not a noble war of liberation. It was a brutal invasion that destroyed their homes and livelihoods. Lincoln authorized and supported this strategy because he believed it was the only way to end the bloodshed quickly and reunite the country. It was a terrible, calculated decision, one that saved the Union but left deep and lasting scars on the nation. So, where does this leave us with Abraham Lincoln? Does learning about these darker, more complex aspects of his presidency make him less of a great figure? I don't think so. If anything, it makes him more human. It shows us that he wasn't a marble statue, but a real person grappling with impossible choices in the most divided time in American history. He was a product of his time, with flaws and prejudices we find uncomfortable today. But he was also a leader who showed an incredible capacity for growth and change. He made ruthless, constitutionally questionable decisions in the name of a greater goal, preserving the nation and, ultimately, moving it closer to its founding ideals of liberty. The story of Lincoln is a powerful lesson that history is rarely a simple tale of good versus evil. It's messy, it's complicated, and it's filled with shades of gray. Understanding the full picture, warts and all, allows us to appreciate his achievements even more. What do you think? Did any of this surprise you? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history. We'll see you in the next video.